In public relations, there is a golden rule: show, don't tell. True authority and empathy and authenticity are demonstrated through consistent action over time. Consistency is everything in PR. But over the last 7 years, Meghan Markle hasn't just disregarded this rule. She has tried to rewrite the Hollywood PR playbook by doing the exact opposite. From private photographers at solemn events to explosive sit-down interviews designed to set the record straight, every aggressive attempt to control her narrative has triggered an immediate and brutal backlash. Today, we're dissecting the psychology of the clapback, why hyper-curated image control creates the exact contrived vibe audiences reject, and the psychological loop trapping Meghan Markle in a PR disaster of her own making. Hi everybody, I'm Beebs Kelly. Welcome back to another video. Before we begin, I would like to invite you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Click like and hype this video if you wish. So let's go all the way back to November 2016, before all of this started, before most of us knew who Meghan Markle even was. Just months into dating Prince Harry, Meghan Markle allegedly, as the story goes, convinced Prince Harry that it was necessary to make an announcement, a proclamation, if you will, that they were dating and that she should be left alone. It was very, very bizarre, not the norm, and also a sketchy PR move from the start, but it was very unprecedented. Somebody dating somebody, a royal dating somebody rarely, if ever, results in statements like these. But Prince Harry's communications secretary released a scathing official statement confirming the relationship while condemning press harassment and tabloid racial undertones. The problem was that there was no evidence of this at all. The tabloids, the paparazzi were not chasing down Meghan. She was not being followed or stalked or bothered or anything of that nature. So it was weird. And the fallout from this was swift. It was intended to draw a line in the sand, and instead, it set an adversarial, hyper-defensive tone from day one when it came to Meghan and Harry as a couple. Instead of starving the tabloid beast, it signaled to the media that narratives got under the couple's skin. It painted a massive target on them for heightened scrutiny and initiating the us versus them framing that Harry and Meghan have been relying on since they dated. This was the first attempt at controlling the media narratives that Meghan put forth. She has a history of wanting to control every narrative, every story, and have everything be exactly how she wants it to be, especially when it comes to the media and her public image. The problem is that that never really works. And so this very first introduction of who Meghan was, that she was dating Harry, to the public, the first time most of us ever heard of this woman, it was through an attempt to control her narrative. So her first introduction to the public, her first impression to the public was that of someone trying to control perceptions. And you know what they say about first impressions and how hard they are to shake. And while this is what I would call a compulsion on Meghan Markle's part, this pattern is consistent, it's ever present. The next big moment that I would say was super pivotal in terms of the image control attempt and the backlash that followed was the Friends of Meghan People magazine briefing in February 2019. 5 anonymous inner circle friends spoke to People magazine to defend her against tabloid rumors, staff bullying allegations, which I've always found peculiar. How would her friends know anything about how she behaves with staff, as well as the situation going on with her estranged father, Thomas Markle? This was a big mistake on many, many fronts, but when we are looking at it specifically from this image control perspective, it shattered the royal protocol of never complain, never explain. The public perceived it as an orchestrated back-channel PR maneuver rather than an organic defense. It backfired catastrophically in court years later during her lawsuit against the Associated newspaper, forcing her to apologize to a judge for forgetting that she had authorized her PR chief to brief the authors of the biography Finding Freedom around the same time as having her friends talk to People magazine. Even though it was through other people, they still wouldn't have done it without her explicit approval, especially because it was 5 separate people who didn't have their own personal connections. It's not like they were all besties and got together and were like, you know what we should do for Meghan? They were separate. So Meghan was the one linking them and the one who coordinated this story coming to the press, which once again was a contradiction. This woman who wanted to complain about press intrusion and press coverage not being the way she wanted it to be was also actively trying to use the press to manipulate and control her own public image, not just from the start of her relationship with Prince Harry, but even over a year later, after she joined Prince Harry, after she got married, she was still hooked on this, instead of just putting her head down and showing people with her actions that she's kind or amiable or respectable or any of those things. No, instead, she wanted to have people come out of the woodwork and defend her and change the media narrative so that she could have approval now. She wanted it now, and she wasn't willing to do the work to get there. Perhaps the most infamous and perhaps the most famous example of this image control attempt was the Oprah Winfrey sit-down special in March 2021, I believe it was. This was the ultimate reframe. It was a 2-hour primetime interview designed to dismantle British tabloid narratives, present her truth, and position the couple as surviving victims of a cold and unsupportive institution. And we all know how that went. It wasn't just the lies and the manipulations that resulted in people rejecting all of her claims from the Oprah interview, but it was her general demeanor and the act of it at all in the first place. Although it generated a massive initial sympathy spike, especially in the United States, the PR victory was short-lived. Observers and journalists quickly, almost immediately, fact-checked many of the key claims, like the secret backyard wedding 3 days prior, the passport confiscation while traveling internationally, etc. It cemented her reputation for launching calculated clapbacks, alienating moderate audiences who didn't feel strongly either way, who felt manipulated by the heavy emotional framing and the lies that she told. So she lost a lot of that middle ground, neutral audience with the Oprah interview. We're like, oh, she's lying or she's manipulating or we don't like what we've just seen in this Oprah interview. Therefore, a huge amount of people who didn't really have a big opinion of her either way, because the Oprah interview had such high viewership, immediately turned on her. So it actually, when we look at the net supporters and likability factor, Oprah was a huge catalyst that resulted in the unpopularity ratings that she now is still dealing with. But it also felt very much like she wanted to shift and reframe all of these things in almost like a list of claims that she wanted to change and clap back about. And in doing so, she was oftentimes manipulating truths or leaving out context or flat out lying. So it really didn't work, and it enhanced her public image in terms of being contrived, controlling, manipulative, lying, got worse with the Oprah interview. And that pattern continued on. In almost every interview she's done since then, you can find, if you kind of read between the lines or follow along, and I do this for a job, so I can remember previous things that have been said or stories that have come out. Almost every public appearance that she does has at least a couple of things that have recently been in the press that she wants to shift the narrative over or change the perception over. But let's move forward a little over a year to August 2022 with the Cut magazine profile. This one was particularly embarrassing. It was a highly stylized 6,500 word cover story, a lot of material in this one, that was to promote her Archetypes podcast, which failed. It was intended to rebrand her as relaxed, relatable, California mogul, and an intellectual feminist voice, while also being super high end. The photo shoot was very high end, very luxurious, sort of look at this cover. It's cold, it's calculating. But then the interview itself wanted to come across as more relaxed and relatable. So there was a huge mismatch with this one. But also, or perhaps more sensationally, the writer's subtle observational tone exposed Meghan's hyper-curated behaviors, like dictating how anecdotes should be framed in the piece or making scripted-sounding declarations. The public read the article as a masterclass in self-absorption and contrivance, turning what was meant to be a glowing puff piece into a viral meme about her lack of self-awareness. It was quite embarrassing, and the author, I believe that one was Allison P. Davis, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, please. But she even had trouble with the cut after that. It didn't go well. Meghan threw a tantrum, allegedly, according to rumors. But then in December 2022 and early 2023, we had the Netflix docuseries And Harry's Spare, complete with a media blitz campaign. The 6-hour fakementary series promised the Sussex story the Sussex way. And it used intimate personal footage, pictures, followed immediately by Harry's global book tour, which had even more intimate details. This was a perfect example of overexposure. There was too much at once, it was too much altogether, and they were already unpopular and unlikable from the Oprah interview. Additionally, Queen Elizabeth's passing occurred shortly before this, so it was just the worst timing you could possibly imagine for all of these projects all at once. It resulted in a complete and total audience fatigue. The sheer volume of grievances combined with high-gloss production made the public feel like they were being sold a heavily manufactured, commercialized victimhood. South Park parodied this perfectly with the Worldwide Privacy Tour episode, capturing the cultural consensus that their demand for privacy was contradicted by relentless self-promotion. Just about a year later, she launched American Riviera Orchard Montecito, switched it to As Ever, No Better really, in 2024 to present. And this period of time saw her return to Instagram, soft launching a luxury lifestyle brand via cryptic Instagram teasers, and sending numbered jars of jam to select high-profile influencers to post on their stories. This was, again, the wrong first impression to give for her brand. She relied on a 2015-era influencer marketing playbook, which felt outdated and elitist in 2024 and 2025. She launched without an actual website, without any purchasable products, without any organic community connection. It made the entire thing feel like a top-down orchestrated vanity project designed to manufacture hype rather than actually share a genuine passion or actually launch a successful business, because the business plan was non-existent basically. The way she started teasing it was like a little kid who couldn't patiently wait until she actually had products and a website ready to go. So that initial interest or the initial spike in curiosity was dampened repeatedly, because throughout the entire year and a half before she actually had products available and a website built, every single time she tried to tease it, she was just showing people that it was not ready, it was unorganized, and there was nothing there to see. So we know that these things didn't work. We know this pattern. We've seen it playing out. But the reason behind it, the reason why these things don't work when it comes to PR and public psychology is really fascinating and shows in greater detail exactly why her media strategies have failed so hard. Because she's been in the media. Like I've said this before, this woman has had thousands of words in interviews, in print interviews, hours upon hours of podcast airtime and actual TV interviews and conferences. Like, she has been out there heavily saturating the market from a PR perspective, and yet she cannot turn things around for herself. Her brand is still in the dumps. She's still grossly unliked, and none of it's working. Her public image still is terrible. And it's because she doesn't know what she's doing when it comes to PR. One of the biggest factors here is the very simple fact of psychological reactance. Humans don't like being told what to think or feel. We just don't. We never have. We like to decide that for ourselves. And when PR is too prescriptive, the way it is with Meghan, demanding the public view someone as a humanitarian victim or a relatable girl next door, audiences experience reactance. Instead of accepting the narrative, viewers push back. They scrutinize the behavior for flaws to prove their independence of thought. So it's an almost subconscious reaction or response to trying to force someone down someone's throat and package them as the next big thing. People stop liking them very, very quickly. It's a well-documented phenomenon. And Meghan has been doing this endlessly from the beginning of trying to force people to like her, and Harry too, of like, Meghan is so this way. Everybody should just love her because she's so this way. It's the exact opposite of what is needed to actually get the public on your side. We also have the show don't tell paradox. In branding, declaring an attribute absolutely destroys it all of the time. The moment you have to tell people you're authentic, kind, or organic, you're proving that you're not. And when we compare her strategy to traditional royalty or A-list actors like Keanu Reeves or Cillian Murphy, who maintain mystique by letting their work and quiet actions build their public persona over decades, it becomes painfully clear why Meghan's methods have failed her. As many of you have pointed out as well, there's also the Streisand effect, the problem with a clapback. A lot of times when you see or hear something that's untrue, of course your instinct is to defend yourself. But when it comes to PR, when it comes to public figures, that is the wrong approach almost all of the time. By reacting to every negative tabloid story or public criticism, she's breathing life into those very stories that would have died in the 48-hour news cycle if left alone. Reframing attempts act as oxygen for controversy. Every explanation invites a counter-explanation from the press or the other party, trapping her in a perpetual defensive loop. And then on top of it all, we have the absolute loss of mystique. The oversaturation for years has been overwhelming to the public and to audiences. High-status branding requires scarcity. By releasing podcasts, docuseries, books, and endless PR briefings, the machinery behind the image became too visible. When the audiences see the gears turning, the magic of the brand dies. So one might wonder, what is the motive behind this? It seems pretty straightforward. It seems pretty instinctual or common sense. But for Meghan, apparently it's not. It always leads me to wonder exactly what her motives could possibly be besides just being clueless. There's no way she's that clueless that she's literally doing things the opposite way that's correct. So when we think about what her possible motivations are behind this type of behavior, it makes me think about how she began. She was never a big Hollywood star, but she was in the Hollywood hustle. She was trying to get parts. She just wasn't landing very many of them. And then she was a working actor on Suits. And I've always said this, movies are a totally different ball game. TV shows are a lot more similar to or comparable to a regular 9-to-5 type of job. They're grueling, they're demanding on your time. You have to be there every day during the week. And it's a lot more of a regular grind than movies can be, where you have huge chunks of time off in between if you wish. And Meghan spent 15 years or so as a working actress where survival requires self-monitoring, relentless networking, and active self-promotion. Especially at her level, she wasn't a coveted, sought-after actress who didn't have to work hard to get parts or auditions or anything like that. She had to go to auditions. She had to grind to get seen and make connections and try to get her next part, her next role. And so transitioning away from that and into this ancient hierarchy where control is entirely surrendered to the crown likely triggered a profound loss of agency. Her hypervigilance could have been a maladaptive attempt to apply the Hollywood hustle to an environment that operates on institutional silence and just a completely different ballgame. She went from being a working actress where she needed to make a name for herself and brand herself aggressively, consistently, frequently, for exposure purposes, to a situation when she was a working royal where she had all the exposure she could ever need. She just needed to behave and let the exposure do the work for her. So it's a completely different dynamic that perhaps she just didn't grasp. But we also have the, potential motives of self-monitoring or more of a psychological level. High self-monitors constantly scan their environment to adjust their behavior and project a desired image. When an individual's self-worth is deeply tied to external validation, like how they're perceived rather than an internal compass, any negative press could have felt like an existential threat that must be corrected immediately. So it could have been sort of a psychological reaction born from immense insecurity and external locus of control. We also, of course, have the popular internet theory that she is very high in narcissism and the main character energy, the main character lens of wanting to control her narrative out of narcissistic motives, and tendencies. Viewing life through a cinematic lens where every public appearance must have a curated moral, aesthetic arc or historical weight leads to an unwillingness to let the public form an authentic, messy, multidimensional view of her. She insists on editing the script in real time, and she also has this massive echo chamber with tonal blind spots. She does not have objective team working for her, it would appear, because if she did, in theory, they would be editing and auditing her a lot more harshly and a lot more tightly to prevent these types of things from happening. She has surrounded herself and Harry with PR teams that are self-hired, talent agencies like WME in the past, advisors who execute strategies of hers rather than challenging her premise or developing their own strategies for her brand. And this isolation creates situational blindness. It's like complaining about financial struggles or palace constraints while filming in a $14 million Montecito mansion during a global economic downturn. The tonal blindness there can only be from a lack of true feedback and a lack of qualified PR teams actually working with her and helping her rather than just being kind of like errand people. It seems like she just was like, I'm hiring a PR team to just do what I say and I'm going to tell them what to do and they're going to go and do it. You could just hire an assistant to do that. You don't need a PR person to do that. A PR person works on curating your brand specifically, and good, educated, skilled PR people would have never advised her to do the things that she had been doing. So when we look ahead, going forward, it seems like she's gravitating more towards social media. And this very much could be this backdrop narrative theory that she's trying to create, which is a double-edged sword. By trying to have her public image over here and then her social media profiles and increasing engagement on social media over here, she creates a number of problems for herself. But it appears that right now she has been trying to shift away from explosive high-stakes interviews toward high-frequency, low-stakes lifestyle posting on social media to build a constant backdrop narrative, which is an illusion of intimacy. Social media theoretically allows a public figure to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and normalize their everyday life through aesthetic reels, garden tours, and kitchen clips. However, social media algorithms reward raw vulnerability and unpolished consistency. If her social media presence is perceived as heavily manufactured commercials designed to passively rewrite public perception, audiences sense this string pulling and don't respond positively to it. And that's exactly how her social media posts feel. They don't feel authentic, they feel contrived, like she's doing it for a reason, almost all of them. And so her hyper-curated aesthetic content risks triggering the exact same contrived backlash on a daily basis rather than one big event every few months or every year. Instead of seeming relatable, a pristine, tightly controlled digital backdrop feels like an ongoing performance. And when the brand is the person, that means as ever is going to get sucked into this negative vortex along with Meghan. As she's losing out on any further major Hollywood projects and she doesn't have anything on the agenda where she's the center of attention, she's not hosting anything, she doesn't have her show anymore, her lifestyle brand is standing as her primary entrepreneurial engine right now, which is inextricably tethered to her personal brand equity. When a brand relies entirely on a founder's mystique rather than a unique product utility, the skepticism toward Meghan bleeds directly onto As Ever. If the public views Meghan as hyper-calculating and controlling, As Ever's jams and teas and things like that will also be perceived as not authentic expressions of hospitality, but rather as overpriced transactional props designed to monetize her remaining fan base as souvenirs of Meghan's existence, which is exactly what they seem like to most people right now. In the current climate, the most successful e-commerce and lifestyle brands are currently thriving on transparency, and I mean real transparency, messy supply chains, genuine kitchen failures, real friction of building a business. Her need for image control sanitizes the brand into a sterile, flawless museum exhibition, and consumers lose the emotional trust required to convert from observers to local buyers. If she wanted to shift this and change things, she would have to go through like a complete 4-step process. This is what I would recommend to reverse this controlling, contrived perception that Meghan Markle has right now. First, a moratorium on the clapbacks, a complete and absolute silence toward rumors, tabloid gossip, and public criticism is required for a PR reset. It just is for Meghan. She has to allow herself and her team and Harry to completely ignore anything out there that is irrelevant to them, that they don't like, all of it. Because right now they're seen as adversarial to the press and to the public, and the only way to stop that is to just completely stop responding to things. Stop trying to correct the narrative. Leave it the fuck alone. Step 2, self-deprecation in its actual true form. Not the way that Meghan does it, where it's a humble brag, but real authenticity. The psychological antidote to appearing contrived is demonstrated fallibility. If she publicly laughed at a failed recipe, or owned a business misstep, or poked a lighthearted fun at her own intense need for order, it would shatter the defensive wall instantly and disarm critics. Third, she needs to decouple the ego from the enterprise. She needs to shift the marketing narrative of As Ever from "look at who I am" to "look at what this product does for you." Elevating local artisans or spotlighting community hospitality and making the consumer the hero of the brand story rather than Meghan herself would give the business independent credibility. And step 4, a 3-year quiet grind. Show, don't tell. This is the key, the most important step probably, because public trust cannot be hacked with some clever rebranding campaign or a new media rollout or an interview. It just can't. Trust is rebuilt through a reliable, predictable, quiet execution over years that feels consistent to people. That's why people like Catherine, Princess of Wales, so much, and Prince William so much, because they're very, very consistent. She needs to stop announcing what's coming, stop explaining past actions, and simply execute the work consistently without a press release for years before she goes back to her old ways, if ever. Hopefully it would be a permanent change. But the chances of her doing that are pretty slim. What she's done with this pattern is created a situation where she has complete bankruptcy of credibility. Like, there is absolutely no credibility left with Meghan when it comes to her public image because of all of these things: the lies, the image control patterns, the manipulating and controlling her image at all costs, even when it comes to lying or fudging the narrative. And when image control repeatedly fails over an extended period of time, a public figure completely exhausts their benefit of the doubt with the audience or the public. In crisis communications, poor management of public blunders can cause irreversible damage to a brand's long-term credibility. So once an individual enters credibility bankruptcy, as Meghan Markle has, the public's baseline assumption shifts from open-mindedness to immediate suspicion. Even genuinely empathetic acts like real humanitarian efforts or authentic moments of vulnerability are instantly deciphered by audiences as calculated PR stunts. The very tools designed to generate warmth instead trigger cynicism. And that's exactly where Meghan and Harry are right now. Nothing that they do is being viewed from an objective space. Everything that they do is being viewed from this polarizing environment where they are mostly disliked. Their approval ratings are embarrassingly low. Their disapproval ratings record high. And it's because of this consistent attempt at controlling the narrative starting way back in 2016. And so she has crossed into this parody milestone. When a celebrity repeatedly tries to force a narrative that directly contradicts what the public observes with their own eyes, they lose the authorship of their personal identity. The figure transitions from a serious subject of public discussion to a permanent cultural archetype or meme. The celebrity becomes a caricature of themselves. And once a PR strategy crosses into the realm of parody, any further attempts to set the record straight only make the joke funnier to the public. In the early stages of a PR backfire, aggressive clapbacks and reframing attempts generate intense polarization, anger, and debate. While it's negative, this attention still fuels an attention economy, driving clicks and book sales and initial documentary viewership. But over time, the predictable loop of grievance and reframing causes profound audience fatigue. The public stops getting angry and simply tunes out. Being polarizing can still be monetized, but becoming exhaustingly predictable as Meghan and Harry have, and boring, is the ultimate death knell for a consumer venture like As Ever, or for a public brand like Meghan and Harry in general. So do you think Meghan and Harry's public image is too far gone at this point? We've been asking this question ever since the Oprah interview, it feels like, but they just put their blinders on and kept trying to force forward their ideal or their vision for their future. And the public has repeatedly rejected it and slapped it away and slapped it down and tore it down and said, no, you don't get to do that after this. And you don't get to just lie and make things up and try to charge forth anyway. But at this point, it seems like the public really is entering into a more apathetic state with the couple. But I'm interested to hear what you think in the comments section. Leave me a comment down below, your opinion. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye.